will gays go to heaven? And with that being said, I would like to add just a few biblical facts that most individuals may not be aware of about the Bible and some historical facts about gays as well. So, first of all, when we look at the Bible, most individuals would say that the King James Version is the most prized possession of the books out of all of them. However, when we look at the history of the King James Version Bible, we would also see that there is a huge history documented in reference to homosexuality. And by no means I am making this video because I want to bash, shame, or diss anyone in reference to being a part of the LGBTQ community. And in actuality, it's quite the opposite. I'm actually in defense, if I may say, being a heterosexual male myself. However, there's some knowledge and information I think that most individuals should be aware of. So again, the King James Version Bible is usually acknowledged the most accurate and the most read and the most commonly used Bible amongst the Christian faith. And once again, I am not here to discriminate or pick on or diss any individuals who may be of the Christian faith. I am just letting you guys know about some facts most individuals may not be aware of. So back to the King James Version Bible. Throughout history, we know that the King James Version Bible was produced and directed by King James the First. However, what most individuals may not be aware of is that King James the First was gay.
I know they could be mad at me now. It's like, man, I can see these individuals right now getting ready to stone me for this type of conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because yeah, this is something. This is gonna be very interesting. Like I said, uh, anyway, let me just keep going.
Yes, I said King James the First, the director, the producer, the coordinator of the Bible was gay. And again, I am not here to bash anyone about being gay. However, I am here, like I said, once again, more in defense because I do not like the fact that you have the pot calling the kettle black. Therefore, when we see most individuals in the religious community, be it pastors, preachers, ministers, most individuals would never ever bring this fact up in public. And for those of you, we have something called the internet. Just go online and look it up. You will find the facts, the information is there. There is no need for me to be sued for defamation of character because this is a fact. And like I said, a public fact, but you will not hear this being spoken upon in the public. So again, like I said before, King James the First was gay. And it is documented, well documented, that King James the First had a 14-year lover called Emis Stott. Again, Emis Stott, or MSC Stott, he was a Frenchman. I'm not quite too sure if I'm pronouncing it correct. I think it is ESME. It's me. I think that is how it's pronounced. But again, I'm not fluent in French, so I could be pronouncing it incorrect. But again, either way, the King James the First had a love affair of 14 years with a gentleman called Emi Stewart. And Emi Stewart was the first Duke of Lennox. And thereafter, the King James the First had a extremely deep love affair with another individual called George Villiers. And George Villiers was the first Duke of Buckingham. And this is well documented. Again, I am not here to bash anyone about being gay or their sexual preferences. I am here to address the fact that we have individuals in the spiritual community, pastors, preachers, and ministers who would condemn homosexuality, whereas the book that was inspired by God supposedly is written and was not written but was inspired and directed by a homosexual. So I find that to be extremely, extremely nerve-wracking and disconcerting because, again, you have the pot calling the kettle black. So please, again, go online and look this information up and you would see that is factual. And what makes this information even more, I would not say disturbing, because the King James had a right to his sexual preferences. And back then, at the time, as far as I'm concerned, homosexuality in the era of the King James time and before, homosexuality was extremely, extremely common and accepted. It was well documented and known that men of great caliber had young men doing sexual biddings and so forth and so on. So back then, the freak offs that we are seeing today is a joke to compare to what was going on back then, especially.
So, just for the record, all of this information that I'm saying right now is literally documented all over the internet. You guys are just gonna have to go and look. Don't think that I'm just making all of this stuff up. All of these names that I'm talking about, just go and Google the stuff, and you will be surprised at what you found, what you will find. So again, this information is not top secret per se. However, it is not common knowledge. You would not find this information out anywhere for the most part. The average person in the religious community, in churches, would never, ever, ever bring this up to the public. Even if a pastor may know about this, which most likely some do know because if they've studied their religion, they've studied the background about the Bible, they've maybe studied some theology and things of that sort, it is most likely that they have come across this information as well. But again, this information will be suppressed and they will never, ever, ever bring this out to the general public. So that's what I'm saying again. This information will only be found from someone like myself or some other esoteric teachers will bring this information out. And like I said again, I am not here at all. I am not against homosexuality. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, I am in defense. I'm actually trying uh, to defend the fact that the individuals that are condemning these individuals, they they are actually hypocrites and they are actually hypocritical because they are keeping information about the source of their belief. The producer, the director, and the motivator of the King James Version Bible, the king himself was a homosexual, but the average person does not know that. And the church, some of the church members may know this as well. But again, like I said, this is something that they would never, ever, ever promote to the public. So that is what I'm talking about, the hypocrisy about the church keeping this information from the masses and at the same time telling individuals who may have a different sexual preference, sex wise, gender wise, they are telling those individuals they are condemned to hell. That is what I'm talking about, and that is what I am not happy about. So that is why I'm creating this video. This was the motivation behind the video because the information really has a lot to do with esoteric knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and which you will find out as I go on in this video.
in our religious community. So back to my story again. The King James the first, who was the director of the Bible, producer, and the most loved Bible of them all, was gay. And again, I am not here to point a finger to say that him being gay is a problem. I am having a problem with those in the religious community who wants to disown or uh, disrespect, if I may say, or deny homosexuals or the LGBTQ community as not having a place in heaven. That is what this video is all about today. And I think, again, individuals should be aware of this because you would never hear this information spoken about in public or behind a pulpit. And why would a pastor not speak about this information? Why does the public does not know this information? After all of the years, we have held on to this book. And again, the book is nothing wrong with the book. I'm saying that we said that this book was inspired by God and was the word of God. But however, the person who was inspired to put the book together was a homosexual. So does that make God gay? I do not know. It's a bad joke, but it was a joke nevertheless. Anyhow, so what also was somewhat disconcerting about the King James Version, his story was when he was addressed by the council about his affair, I think it was with George, yes, George Villiers, the love of his life, his true love. Most individuals may not be aware that what King James said was somewhat uh, concerning, if I may say. So history had it that King James wrote a letter back to the Council of, I think it was the Council of England, hopefully that is correct, in 1617, I think it was 1617, King James responded to the Council of England because they wanted to find out how factual it was of him being gay and having an affair with the Duke of Buckingham, again, George Villiers. And his response was amazing because King James the first responded and he said that actually you guys can look it up, find the documents, it's online, it's free, you can look it up. King James said that he cannot be blamed for his choice of lovers because Jesus himself was gay. Yes, you heard me right. King James the first said Jesus was gay. He did not say it in so many words, but what he said was that
I know you guys are not going to believe that, but you guys have to go and look that up as well. You guys have to go and check out uh, the response that he did. Like I said, I think it was the Council of England that sent him some letter, and then they asked him about George Villiers and the relationship that he was having, and King James responded. This is what he said. So just go. Don't take my word. Go ahead and check it out. Go and do some research, and you'll find out what he said. But and not so in so many words, like I said, he didn't say it directly. That Jesus was gay, but indirectly, that is what he was trying to say. And you guys are gonna hear what he said in a second.
he cannot be blamed for his sexual preferences because Jesus too had sexual preferences and Jesus had James and he had George. And for those who may not be aware, James, I think, was Jesus' beloved, and that is what King James was talking about, and he was comparing himself to Jesus having a beloved.
Actually, it was John, but so that was my bad on that. It was John because John was the beloved of Jesus. So that is what his response was. John was the beloved of Jesus, so Jesus must have loved John unconditionally in some type of abnormal way, which made Jesus gay. So let me just go on and let you hear what else he said.
Male partner, so he should be able to have a beloved male partner as well. So again, that is just some facts to start the Bible off with some information that you may not be aware of And most people may not be aware of this. However, again, you would have pastors, ministers, and priestess preachers condemning homosexuals because of their sexual preferences, but they would never, ever in a million years choose to look at this fact that the person or the book that they hold with such admiration, the founder of this book, was a homosexual. Which also brings me to another few facts in reference to the Bible, in reference to homosexuality. The Bible mentioned homosexuality in many references, but let me get back to this homosexuality in reference to pastors, priests, uh, and pastors, not so much as priests, but pastors, ministers, and other clergy members. This is just an example of the dogmatic behavior in the religious community, because despite the fact this being evidence, they would stick their head in the sand and they would totally deny this as being factual when this is actual documented throughout history. And if you were to go to your pastor or your minister or your uh, bishop or whoever the case may be, and you ask them about this, in most cases they will deny. And that is something that should not be covered up, or someone should stick their head in the sand, because this is an historic fact that, again, King James I was gay. So again, back to the scriptures, we have a few reference to homosexuality, and even those.
And like I was saying, so if you go to your traditional minister, pastor, and you say something like this, you could expect them to throw the pulpit at you. You could expect to be banished from church. So tread lightly. Don't go to your pastor and your minister and say, just come out and say, hey, I heard that King James was gay. What's your opinion on that? You need to really go in some type of covert manner and, express this with the utmost reverence. And you need to be bowed down on your knees, and you need to bring probably a few thousand shekels of gold to the altar, and you need to have a burnt offering and maybe sacrifice a few lambs and a few cows, and a few oxen to bring to the table with all kind of frankincense and more in order to walk out that church alive. So you're not gonna just be accepted with or greeted with some. I don't think that's gonna be the case. I think you're gonna be met with some type of resistance. So go and check it out. Go and do it yourself. Go and ask your pastor what did tell him you heard him or her. You heard that someone said King James was gay. Ask them what and see how they respond. But again, 99.9, I assume that you will be met with some type of resistance and some type of shock and awe, and maybe you're just demonic and blasphemy type of talking. That's what they're gonna say, that you may be possessed or something of the sort. So I don't expect you to just get the answers just like that. But again, like I said, that is why the Bible says, seek and study to show thyself to be approved. This information is not hidden so much. It is hidden per se from the general public, but again, we do have the internet, and that is one of the powerful resources that we have, that we could go and do some research and find out that information as well.
References to homosexuality is a big debate. Some scholars would deny and say that no, we're not talking about homosexuality. No, the Bible is not condoning or admitting to homosexuality being a natural act. No, no, no. Because again, these are the dogmatic ministers and pastors and preachers that I'm talking about, who basically supposedly has the love of God in their hearts for all humanity and all mankind, but they will easily condemn you to death if they have a choice. And I would like to say also, most individuals, most of us should thank God. We should thank God that our pastors and our ministers and our higher religious figures are not God, because many of us will never ever enter the kingdom of heaven. For one reason or another, we will be denied. Even as simple as if you did not pay your tithes, most pastors will tell you you will not get a pass into the kingdom of heaven. Which also brings me to another fact that even tithes is something, this is a topic, side tangent, but even tithes is something that was not, is misunderstood. And they took the information and to make it a benefit, a financial beneficial situation for the church. Because from an esoteric perspective, the word tithes, when they're talking about tithes, they're talking about 10% of the mind. Giving 10% of the mind back to God is what tithes is all about. We're not talking about 10% financial, but again, this is esoteric teachings. And for those who don't understand, there's a difference between esoteric, mesoteric, and exoteric knowledge. Please go back and watch one of my other videos. I go into great details. I think that was Will Red Dreams Ever Stop. I talk about that with the sacred secretion. So this information I'm giving you guys now is what we considered to be esoteric knowledge. Basically, only a few and a few of the masses would have this access to this information that I'm talking about in reference to tithes not being a financial situation. It is more of a mental situation because, like we all have heard before, we only use 10% of the brain, and the other 90% is pretty much dormant or unused. So this 10% that they're talking about the brain is what tithes was really all about, giving the 10% of the carnal mind to Christ, to Joshua, Yesus, consciousness, whatever you want to say. That is what the 10% really originally represented in the ancient esoteric teachings, our knowledge. However, it was translated by greed, out of greed, to get financial gain from individuals, to give, for individuals to give 10% of their livelihood, 10% of their salary back then, 10% of whatever corn, greens, whatever individuals had at the time who did not have any money, they still contributed 10% of their harvest or whatever the situation may be. But again, once again, for the last time, the 10% was originally talking about giving 10% of the mind. The 10% was meant to be giving 10% of the carnal mind, the left brain, to the spirit man, sacrificing the 10% of the fleshly mind to the spirit. And that is what the 10% was all about. So
I know most guys, most individuals have never heard that before. However, that was something that I did come across very interesting when I was along my spiritual research journey, when I was pretty much overturning every rock that I could find, looking at every uh, concept or different belief systems. That is how I came across that information. Like I said, that is esoteric knowledge. That is something that will not be found so easily. You have to do a lot of research, or like I said, you have to talk to somebody who has extensive spiritual knowledge, wisdom, and understanding background, who have done a lot of research themselves. And I think that would be the only way you would come across this. But again, that 10% has been used to manipulate individuals, because if you think about it, it really does make sense. They say we use only 10% of the brain, 90% of the brain is unused per se. And so we're talking about the left percent of the left side of the brain, the masculine side of the brain is the 10%, the logical side of the brain is the side of the brain that we use, but the majority of the brain, the unconscious side of the brain, the feminine side of the brain, the spiritual side of the brain is unused. And so that is the whole purpose of enlightenment or becoming awake, to actually have a holistic type of mindset, more so developing the mind of Christ, giving the carnal mind, utilizing the whole mind, giving the carnal mind, sacrificing the carnal mind, the 10% of the mind to the spiritual mind. And this happens again, this is a part of the process of being awake or awakening, if I may say. So again, that tide, that 10%, what individuals knew this back in the day, the esoteric teachers, the Gnostics, and those guys, they knew about this, that 10% represented 10% of the mind. However, when greed came in the situation, pastors way back then, they decided to actually take that 10% from individuals physically, whether it be through monetary gain, money. Some of the individuals back then who didn't have the money, they was able to give green or cattle or whatever it is that they had. But this 10% thing, physical to benefit the church or whatever, or some other ministries, this has been going on for a long time. This is nothing new. However, that is why I'm sharing this information with you guys so you guys could see it from that perspective, from the old ancient perspective, that the 10% of the mind was literally supposed to be something mental, giving back to God, giving back to the Spirit, giving back to the God consciousness, the Christ consciousness, and that is how it is achieved by sacrificing the carnal mind, the fleshly mind, putting the flesh on the altar to receive Christ consciousness.
So back to the reference to gays being mentioned, homosexuals being mentioned in the Bible. But however, because of dogmatic ministers and preachers and pastors, this information has also been suppressed and somewhat denied as well. So we have something in the Bible when you see scriptures talking about eunuchs. Eunuchs, those were individuals there. The Bible said there were three types of eunuchs. I can't remember exactly where the scriptures are. I think somewhere in Matthew, but I'm not here to actually quote scriptures. I'm just giving some facts. So again, eunuchs were individuals who were of service to the palace, and usually they would be in charge of watching harems, women, and so forth and so on. They would do other tasks, but the Bible said there were three types of eunuchs. Three types of eunuchs. One type of eunuch being what they would consider to be a natural eunuch or a eunuch from birth. And then they would have someone what they would also call a eunuch from man, a eunuch that was made, and that eunuch was someone who basically would have been, who have gotten maybe a surgery and gotten their testicles or their penis, something removed of the male organ that would render them pretty much dysfunctional to have kids or even sexual activities as well, because obviously the king did not want individuals to be sexually active with his harem, and most likely the possibility of the eunuchs getting one of the king's harem women in the harem pregnant. That was something that they tried to avoid, so they would just castrate these men so they would not have the ability to have sex. And then they said that the third type of eunuch, there was a eunuch who pretty much sacrificed their sexual life and devote themselves to having a celibate life for the kingdom of heaven. And those would be considered, uh, monks, priests, and nuns. People who devote their life sexually to celibacy.
Actually, unfortunately, I did not change the title for the individual that's joined the chat. I didn't change the channel the title. That was a very old. That was the last video that I did. We live in a simulation. However, this video that I'm talking about today, title is "Will Gays Go to Heaven?" Do not hate on gays. That is what this video is all about. So I strongly apologize. I wasn't able to actually. I didn't realize that I didn't change the channel. Sorry, I didn't change the title to this live stream. I did that much later. So again, my apologies. That video talking about we live in a simulation. You could go and see that video inside of the catalog, if I may say, the pre-recorded videos. I recorded that video, I think, yesterday or day before yesterday. We live in a simulation. You could go and check that out as well. And but this particular video, again, like I said, that is my bad. I didn't change the title. I should have, but I didn't before I started the stream. So the title of this video is "Will Gays Go to Heaven?" And I'm talking about some of the hypocrisy about the Bible and things of the sort, specifically King James, and how the church tend to reject individuals who may have a different sexual preference, and they may say that uh, they will go to hell and all the gays will go to hell, homosexuals will go to hell. But however, the King James, the first himself was actually a homosexual. But thank you for joining. That is a very brief update of what this video is all about. So you could actually continue to watch and follow as I go on. So that simulation video, no, that is something, that is the video that I did yesterday. This is the new video talking about King James himself, the author, director, and publisher and producer of the Bible, actually being gay. So that is what this video is going to be about. So again, I thank you for joining the stream as well. So I'm going to just continue right now. If you understand, you could say something in the chat or let me know as well.
And do not have sexual acts. Again, you have nuns, priests, monks, and so forth who practice celibacy. And as we all know by now, you can go back.
Thank you, Gaia Maya. I do appreciate you joining the chat. And please just continue to come back and check sporadically. I will change the subject, the title when the stream is done, but unfortunately, I should have done that before the video started, but I did not. So again, this is a very powerful, spiritual, sensitive subject matter as well. But again, very powerful. You could actually maybe learn something as well. So like I was saying again, just going back, what I was saying was that there were three, according to the Bible, there were three types of eunuchs. There were three types of men that were eunuchs. They have first the eunuchs that were born with some, most likely born with some type of either some type of physical dysfunction, some type of physical uh, testicle or penis or something of the sort, maybe was not necessarily normal, if I may say. And then you have some of those guys as well who may have born, most likely did not have any desire to be with women. And so those were considered the natural eunuchs. Those individuals were considered natural. They did not have any desires to sleep with women. So like I said, some of the scholars would debate heavily. They would say that those natural eunuchs were not gay, they were not homosexuals, and then some scholars would say that yes, they were homosexuals because some men, naturally from nature by birth, do not have any desire for women at a very young age. So those would be considered the natural eunuchs. And then the Bible also spoke about some of the eunuchs that were pretty much uh, changed or made that way. These eunuchs maybe were castrated, something of that sort, some surgery or something physical done to the penis or the testicles, something of that sort. Those individuals were made that way. And then the third type of eunuch, those individuals were literally was because we considered monks and like I said, you know, priests and nuns and anybody who pretty much wanted to devote their life uh, to a spiritual service and devote their life to being celibate and not wanting to have sex. Those were the three types of eunuchs that the Bible spoke about. And at the same time, again, those individuals who uh, were eunuchs, like I said, the king, it would not be in the king's best interest to have sex with, sorry, not have sex. It would be in the king's best interest to not have eunuchs that wanted to have sex with his harem. So either the eunuchs were born gay, they got castrated, or they were really devoted spiritual masters, if I may say, who did not care to have sex at all, and they devoted their lives to the church or to the king. And those individuals were also eunuchs as well. But again, either way, there were eunuchs that were born that way, which is a great debate. Big scholars all around the world have debated whether these eunuchs were literally born gay or they were born physically some physically challenged sexually that made them qualified to be gay. Like I said, some scholars say yes, they were literally born gay, born homosexuals, having no desire at all for women, and some say no, that is not the case, because again, some scholars may not want to say that homosexuality is something that is biological, and so therefore they may not want to say that these individuals did not have a choice because they want to lean more on the religious aspect and say that hey, these individuals choose to be that way. That is what I'm saying. Uh, but the Bible clearly states that some individuals were born that way. Either way, you be the judge.
Back and watch my video, how I got the name Triple P, Pimp, Prophet, and Priest. That is also me talking about my celibate history, because most of us, most individuals might not be aware. I do promote celibacy, and I have been celibate now over 6 years, going on 4 years, sorry, going on 7 years straight. No masturbation. I practice no FAP, no masturbation, semen retention. Is the conservation or the holding or retaining semen or sperm, if I may say, and also brahmacharya, which includes celibacy and having some devotional life into spiritual awareness, if I may say. So I do, they call me again Triple P, uh, Pimp, Prophet, and Priest. So I too practice and promote celibacy in the sense that it would be beneficial for the spiritual mind, body, and soul. So again, so the Bible talks about these eunuchs, and some pastors would say that the natural eunuch, again, because we have dogmatic individuals who tend to reject facts, and Jesus himself said that there were eunuchs that were born this way from birth, meaning that they were born homosexual or they were born uh, having a sexual preference for the opposite sex. So, but some pastors would say, no, this is not true. What they are talking about is someone who was castrated. If they were castrated or they had some type of surgery, this would be considered uh, unnatural unit, and that's what they would be talking about. There are many, many scriptures in reference to homosexuality throughout the Bible, and there are three main major categories that they were considered to be uh, uh, eunuchs. Again, there are the natural eunuchs.
Thank you for joining the stream. And so, like I was saying again, just going over it very briefly, according to the scriptures, there were three type of natural eunuchs. One type of eunuch was the natural eunuch, the individuals that were born homosexuals, born gay. However, again, like I said, some scholars say no, these individuals were not born gay, they were born with some type of physical deformity to the penis or the testicles or something of that sort, something maybe they were hermaphrodites or something of that sort that prevented them from actually wanting to have sex with women. That is what some scholars would say. And then some scholars would say, hey, these individuals literally were born that way. They were born gay. They didn't have any desire to have sex with anybody. At least they didn't have any desire to have sex with women. So the king made those individuals eunuchs because the king was very comfortable around men that he knew had a preference for the same sex. Because, like I said, it would not have been in the king's favor to have normal heterosexual men as eunuchs. And then, like I said, the second eunuchs were the eunuchs that were made that way, meaning through some type of castration or something of the sort, removal of the testicles, removing of the penis, something of the sort. But they were forced, in many cases, they were forced to do that. That is something that they just didn't do willingly. But as time going, you will see what I'm talking about. And then again, like I said, also as well, some individuals were devoted priests, some individuals were devoted to the kingdom, some individuals were devoted to celibacy, and these individuals wanted to devote their lives to spiritual kingdom work and pretty much denounce themselves from having sexual acts with pretty much the sex partners that if they were men, they put down the ark of sex in the name of the kingdom. So those were the three type of eunuchs. But again, like I said, the first one being a big debate. But again, many scholars say that these individuals literally were born homosexuals as well.
Natural eunuch was an individual who was born uh, in such a. Some scholars would say they're not talking about gays, they're not referring to gays, and then some scholars would say yes, they are talking about homosexuals. But again, the scholars who do not want to accept the fact that they are talking about gays, Jesus Christos, Yahshua himself said that let those who hear, let them accept. So basically, if you could accept this as being a fact, a truth, that homosexuals were born that way, let them accept it. And for those who do not, those who do not accept it, they will not. So again, so we have the sexual preference of eunuchs being a natural eunuch who does not have a desire at all to have sex with the female, and then you have eunuchs that were made, which were the eunuchs who went and they did some type of surgery and they got castrated or something of that sort. And usually those eunuchs were eunuchs, slaves who the masters did this, I guess, pure without their will. I guess they did not have a choice. The masters just basically castrated them because they were slaves. And then again, like I said, they have the eunuchs who have devoted their lives to God and they practice celibacy and they just do this in the name of the kingdom of heaven. And they therefore, again, monks, pastors, priests, and so forth, and nuns or individuals who usually practice celibacy in the name of God. But again, once again, the Bible has mentioned eunuchs as being a natural phenomenon, whereas men or women, per se, was born that way. And some individuals would say they have a choice, but that is not the case. If you look at, again, from a a biological perspective, we have we have chemicals. The male produces something called testosterone, and the female produces something called estrogen. And these chemicals are born, they come with the human when the human is born. There's no, you cannot determine how much estrogen. Again, you have females being born with something called estrogen, and we have males being born with something called uh, testosterone. So, and we cannot determine how much estrogen or testosterone each individual will be born with. This is a biological factor. Genetics plays a role. You cannot determine what you have. So how could you, if testosterone is responsible for masculinity, for males being masculine, and estrogen is responsible for females being feminine, and you do not have any control over this, how could you hold somebody accountable for something that they did not choose? So, in other words, if a male is born with very low testosterone, very low testosterone, that individual most likely will be considered very feminine. They would have more feminine traits than masculine traits. So, and also if you have a female has very little estrogen, that female would have very little feminine traits. So you have, that is something beyond our control. So homosexuality is not a choice. It is a biological situation that takes place in the Bible, in the body, that the individuals do not have any control over at all. So I think it is very unfair to hold someone accountable for something that they cannot control biologically. It is like saying you are upset because of your height, your this, your that, your looks, or whatever, and you had no control over that. The only people who had control over that is maybe basically you should blame your parents. If anything, blame your parents, blame your dad for not having any standards, and he just wanted to poke anything that moved, and he didn't care how the female looked. Blame your dad, blame your mom. If anything, if you want to blame somebody for how you look, that's who you should blame. But do not blame, do not say it's a choice. You did not have a choice in the matter at all. So, which is another factor why I think it is very hypocritical for individuals to pretty much reject or disown homosexuals and say that they are not going to make it into heaven, or whatever the case may be, because it was their choice. And definitely, most definitely, it was never their choice. It was something that they did not choose. If you were a male, I'm just hypothetically speaking.
So that is my logic. My logic is that some may disagree, some may disagree, and some may agree. But like I said earlier, when we were born from birth, women tend to have more estrogen than men, and some and men have more testosterone than women. So men are known for having testosterone. That is what makes men masculine, and and estrogen is what makes women feminine. However, to my recollection, if I'm correct, I think we all have a little bit of both. I think men have testosterone and a little estrogen. Again, don't hold me to that. I just assume. I think that is what I remember from something I learned back in the day. But so again, men have a little bit of estrogen also, but they are more predominantly testosterone, and women have a little of testosterone as well. So women have both estrogen and testosterone. So the testosterone in men determines a lot of masculine factors, a lot of masculine traits, different things of that sort. That is what we are talking about, the masculine identity, if I may say. Uh, Testosterone is responsible for how a man looks, the body structure, facial uh, features, hair, the voice, the Adam apple, the deep, all of these different things, bone structure, whatever else testosterone is responsible for, it is pretty much a chemical that helps to build a young male, a baby boy, into more so having male characteristics, and also the female having estrogen being the more dominant feature or chemical, if I may say. Individuals, females having more estrogen would allow that female to be a lot more feminine, having a more softer voice, and whatever else estrogen is responsible for. But I'm sure it's more of a hormonal type of chemical that helps individuals, females, to be a lot more, like I said, feminine. So if you have a man that has very low testosterone and high estrogen, it is biologically most likely that that man will be a lot or a little more feminine, if I may say. And then you have a female having more testosterone, that female would become a lot more masculine. But again, is that the individual's choice? Did the individual was the individual uh, have a choice in the matter? Did the individual decide to say, hey, I'm going to have this level of testosterone, I'm going to have this level of estrogen? No. So that is my argument why I say that it is a choice. Again, however, at the same time, I will say that environment does play a role inside of our all of our decisions in life, because if you maybe were born in a certain environment as a male, maybe again being around uh, many female, and females being a more dominant figure in that male's life as well. We notice some men who grew up with their mothers only tend to be a lot more uh, different than men, less masculine, if I may say. They may be less masculine than men who grew up with a mother and a father, and especially if the father was a very dominant father, masculine father. Most boys tend to follow their fathers, but again, we have some boys that may have been brought up solely by their mother. These individuals sometimes may be less dominant, less masculine, and they may be psychologically possible, probable, susceptible to having outside different influencing their sexual preferences as well. That is also possible. We know again scientifically, psychologically, environment does play a role in everything that we do. So again, some females also could have been brought up in more masculine around boys, and maybe playing, fighting, and all of these different attributes and different characteristics that men have. that female, that young girl could have adopted those characteristics from being solely around men as well. There's many, many reasons why it could have happened from an environmental perspective. That is not really my field per se, but however, the environment does have an effect on individuals as well. So that is my argument that the chemicals itself that is responsible for individuals' masculinity and femininity was given to us from birth. So if something was given to us from birth, we had no choice. Just like I said, you cannot dictate how tall you would be. You cannot dictate how anything about yourself, how you would look, the complexion, hair, facial hair, different things of the sort. You cannot dictate that at all. I will give, for example, when I first wanted to start to grow a beard, and I saw this guy sometime back, many, many, many years ago. I saw a gentleman and he had this beard and it was so cool, man. I was like, man, I wish I could grow a beard like that. And at the time I was a lot younger. I didn't know anything. I just thought that I would just grow the beard. I just thought I would, I would not shave. I literally thought it would just grow, but apparently it did not happen that way at all. In fact, as time went on, most men would know that when they were a lot younger, their facial hair didn't really fill in until a lot a lot later in life. So as for myself, my facial hair did not fill in as much as as it is now, like it was when I was a lot younger in my earlier years, early teens, early 20s, things of that sort. Even maybe early 30s, it was very far different than this. So it kind of escalated as time go on because maybe genetics change, different things of that factor. But again, I did not think that I could just. I thought at the beginning I would just, start to let my beard grow and it would grow into this big, barbaric type of, Viking look. But apparently that was not the case. And some men, again, could grow a beard for years, all their life. Some men have never shaved and not one hair grows on their face. So again, did they have a choice? No. That is what I'm talking about. Those chemicals that are responsible for masculinity and femininity was given to us by from birth. We cannot dictate how tall we want to be, the sound, the deepness of our voice, the softness of our voice from a female perspective, the type of body structure. None of that is actually choice. All of that is actually predetermined from birth. So that is my argument why, again, the eunuchs by birth, individuals who may be gay, they are more most likely to be born that way with attributes that may further influence them when environment comes along, different things of that sort would further push them in that direction.
Or a female, why would you choose to go against the grind, against the green? I have a few friends right now who I know who I suspect could be sus. I do not know for a fact because they're always out getting females going. At least I used to. When I used to go get females, I used to go and get women by the thousands with these guys. And but
That's funny. I don't know if you heard, but I said that back in the day, I was saying that I had some friends that, they were somewhat sus. If they were somewhat suspicious because we would go out and, we would get all of these girls and I laughed because I said I would go and get girls by the thousands. That's kind of funny, but anyhow, maybe not the thousands, more so the hundreds of thousands. Because I really was lucky. I was fortunate in that area. I cannot deny. But either way, not tooting my own horn, but but either way, some of my friends, like I said, we would go out and we would get girls, we would hunt girls. But however, some of their behavior was somewhat suspicious. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about right now. I thought that was really funny that I said that I was getting thousands of girls back in the day.
however, something was always off. They always had, they always had way too many gay friends, than the average guy. The average guy may know someone who is a gay or homosexual. The average straight guy may know one guy maybe who is gay or homosexual, but
And again, by no means I want you guys. Hopefully by now, I hope you guys realize that by no means am I against homosexuality. Am I against gays? I'm literally actually engage the fence. If you really want to get technical about it, I'm actually giving them uh, my perspective. From my perspective, I'm giving them somewhat of a pass, if I may say, because I don't think most of these guys had a choice. So that's what I'm talking about again. But however, we'll further go down that rabbit hole as I continue.
But the average guy does not know 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys who are homosexuals that they actually hang out with. So that would mean that they have so many men that are actually homosexuals, or who they would say, what they would consider to be undercover, and they have wives. Some of these men have wives. Some of these men have children, and some of these men have relationships. They sleep with women in the day and sleep with men at night, and that is nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying that.
And just for the record, that little statement I said, there's nothing wrong with it. You guys can't see the whole screen because some of the subtitle was pretty much covered up because I'm in front of it. And if you guys go and check the whole video, you guys will be able to see the whole video with the whole subtitle. And I'm not advocating that this is good. I'm just saying that they do it for a reason. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that they should do it. I'm saying that they do it because what I'm about to say.
That is obviously that there is a stigma, there is a taboo, there is something negative connected to being a homosexual. That is why individuals would hide their natural inclination to speak out and say that I am this way or I am that. So why would an individual who naturally has a feelings for males, be it a female, having feelings for males, decide to go say, oh, one day I'm just going to go and have a desire for the same sex, for females? No, that is not. Knowing the consequences, knowing the persecution, knowing what is going to come along with this, why would anyone choose this at will? No, they will not. Why would a male know that if he is found out to be gay, that would be pretty much, in most cases, the end of him? In most cases, he would be rejected, ridiculed, laughed at, made fun of, made ashamed of, all of these negative things that come along when individuals find out you are gay. Why would a natural, normal human being say that they would choose this punishment and suffering willingly? They will not. That is why most individuals who are homosexuals do not come out and admit this to the world, which is why I'm making this video and saying that there is a lot of hypocrites in the world, especially those in the religious, spiritual culture. I don't want to necessarily point on a particular religion, but again, we are talking about the King James Version Bible. So those who follow that book, we are talking about you. So again, if the King James, the first, was a homosexual, King James was the first, how come I have never heard, or you have never heard, a pastor, a preacher, or a minister ever in the history of the world speak on this matter? Someone please tell me why this is never ever spoken of, ever in the history of the world. So which brings me to my final point. Again, it is in the Bible. The Bible was promoted and distributed and produced by a homosexual. Jesus himself said it was a natural act, I guess somewhere in Matthew. I can't exactly remember where it was, but you guys should go and check it out. I might put a link somewhere up in the description to say exactly where it is. And again, like I said, there are three types of eunuchs. The natural eunuch that were born homosexuals. Again, some pastors would actually deny this fact, and they would say, no, these are not homosexuals. No, they are not. Like I said, this will be a great debate. Most individuals, modern pastors and ministers would deny the fact that this homosexuality is a natural phenomenon. They would say this is a sinful act and this is of the devil. So again, like I said before, most individuals should thank God that their pastor, their minister is not God, because most of us, many of us, would never enter the kingdom of heaven if it was up to them. So,
And like I just said, that's another very powerful fact because if we know how dogmatic some individuals are when it comes down to their spiritual and their religious beliefs, like I said, we should thank God that most of our spiritual leaders, our religious leaders, are not God. Because if they were God, many of us would have been condemned to hell right away. Many of us would have been cast down into the shadow, into the abyss, into the lake of fire immediately because of not meeting the spiritual requirement or religious requirement of many of our spiritual or religious leaders. Most individuals would be cast down immediately because our pastors, our preachers, and our ministers are so dogmatic, and a lot of these individuals may think that they are holier than thou, and so therefore they would just be quick to pretty much reject anyone for that matter of fact who does not meet a particular requirement. So we should be very grateful that our ministers and our leaders, like I said, our pastors and our priests are not the ones in charge of our final destination.
with that being said, I think that I've covered quite a bit of information in reference to some biblical facts and why we should not condemn someone that is naturally the way they are and they have no other choice because, like I said, men with low testosterone will usually be feminine and women with high testosterone will usually be extremely masculine and vice versa. So, which brings me to like again that hypocrite that being a hypocrite that would be like you know uh, you know Andrew Tate. I'm just saying we know Andrew Tate is one of the most masculine guys there is on the planet. The G, top G. But anyhow, just given using Andrew Tate as a reference, I don't know the guy personally, but I'm just thinking of someone who has extremely high testosterone. And so that would be someone, again, like Andrew Tate, being gay in disguise. I'm not saying he's gay, but I'm just giving you an understanding. That is how I consider the church bashing or being against homosexuals and saying that the LGBTQ community will not enter the kingdom of heaven. That is what I call hypocritical. That is what I call the pot calling the kettle black. That is why I use Andrew Tate as an example to say that Andrew Tate would be someone who, if he was gay, the world would be shocked. Or another individual I could think of that comes to mind would be uh, AMS, Alpha Male Strategies. I don't know if you guys watch that guy, but anyhow, I've watched a few of his videos. He's a funny guy. He's a factual guy. He talks a lot of truth too, but I'm just saying he's also another masculine guy that I could think of with high testosterone, extremely, masculine, if I may say, who talks all about the masculine frame, the masculine frame, the masculine frame. So imagine AMS, Alpha Male Strategies, being homosexual on the down low. And again, I am not saying that he's homosexual. I am not saying that would be another extreme example of someone that the pot calling the kettle black, which I dislike. So, which brings me to my final point that I would like to make. That is why, if those who have seen my other video, the video called the Will Bad Dreams Ever End, that video I'm talking about the sacred secretion, because I am a practitioner of the sacred secretion, and this is what also I would like to confirm in reference to the sacred secretion, because I promote salvation is attained as a biological process in the body as well. Again, the monthly cycle of the sacred secretion. For those who have not seen the video, go back and watch part. I can't remember what part it is, but the title of the video is called Will Wet Dreams Ever End? And that is what I talk about, the process, the practice of the sacred secretion, and how salvation is obtained, and which is also an esoteric knowledge that was hidden and a best kept secret from the average individual as well. So,
So, like I was saying, just to recap very quickly and very briefly, like I said, for the average person online, I shouldn't say the average, I take that back, but many individuals who are online and they may study uh, dating and coaching and things of that sort, many individuals have come across Andrew Tate, the Tate brothers, and we all know Andrew Tate is one of the more extremely masculine, if I may say. Some would even call him misogynist because of his having such a strong masculine identity. Andrew Tate is such a funny guy. I remember watching a video, and someone said that Andrew Tate was crying, and Andrew Tate said that he was not crying. He said that his eyes was just leaking. His eyes were so full of water that they just leaked. I never heard anybody say anything like that in my life. But again, that is the how to give you guys an example how the extremity of Andrew Tate's masculinity, and then also alpha male strategies. These are also another well-known dating coach in the game. So just imagine, like I said, I was using those guys. I'm not saying that they're gay. By no means I want anybody to misconstrue, but I'm saying I'm just using those guys as an example. Imagine someone like Andrew Tate or Alpha Male Strategies being gay on the down low, but coming on the TV, online, putting up such a facade, acting like they are some of the most macho men on the planet. That is what I'm saying. Andrew Tate and Alpha Male Strategies, they came to mind because of their masculine message. Alpha Male Strategy, all of his messages are really about the masculine frame, maintaining the masculine frame, masculine frame, masculine frame. And Andrew Tate is pretty much no difference. Andrew Tate is going to go down, if Andrew Tate, I don't know if, like I said, he can't even share a tail, so if imagine those guys being gay on the down low, that is what I'm talking about, being very hypocritical, and somewhat the church is doing the same thing, being very hypocritical of their system, knowing that the founder of the Bible that they follow was actually a homosexual, and so they and condemn everybody else. That's why I use Andrew Tate and Alpha Male as strategies as examples, because those guys are extremely masculine role models, and so for those guys to be gay on the down low, I think the world would be shocked. It would be like they're coming to the second Christ.
So again, the sacred secretion is a process that happens naturally in the body, whereas if you conserve the seed will go up and there will be a rejuvenation of new blood, activation of dormant brain cells, and the list goes on and on. And this is what the Bible talks about: anointing the oil and the seed and the Christ oil and so forth. The salvation, the death, the burial of Jesus Christ is a biological process in the body that takes place. So that is what I preach and that is what I teach. I do not preach a salvation whereas you are looking for something or someone external to get your redemption. But however, this salvation can be found internally. And that is what I teach and that is what I promote. So from that perspective, from a sacred secretions perspective, will gays be able to enter the kingdom of heaven also? And that answer is yes also, because once again, the sacred secretion is a process that takes place in the human body, be it male or female. Every month, a human has the ability to be saved. Every month, a male or female, this process takes place in the human body. This Christ oil descends and rises from the pineal and pituitary gland and goes down to the sacrum area and rises back up. And there's a big transformation that takes place in the octave thalamus. But again, I'm not here to talk about the sacred secretion, so please go ahead and watch that video. The video again is called "Will Wet Dreams Ever Stop?" And that video is talking a lot about the practice and the process of the sacred secretion in great detail. And I talk about what actually you could expect to happen if you follow these specific requirements that are needed. So again, according to the sacred secretion, everyone is able to enter the kingdom of heaven. Male, female, gays, black, white, brown. Their sexual preference has nothing to do with entering the kingdom of heaven from the sacred secretion perspective. That has nothing to do with your sexual choice. If you have male or female, the same sex choice, you still will be able to be saved. You still will be able to experience the kingdom of heaven within you. You still will be able to experience Christ consciousness, because this process that takes place in the body does not discriminate against anyone, be it straight, gay, crooked, whatever you want to call it. This is not a discrimination practice at all. So once again, so we have three factors so far. So far, I think three or more factors that.
So let me just do a very brief recap for those who again who may not be familiar with the sacred secretion. The sacred secretion again also is a much higher uh, evolution and spiritual sexual discipline, a practice. Whereas now we're talking about not only no fap, we're talking about not only no masturbation, no pornography. We're also retaining the semen also as well. We are retaining the actual fluids. We're not releasing the fluids, but at the same time, we're taking it a lot further. We are actually watching the cycle of the month when the moon enters into the sun sign. It's more of an astrological event that takes place every month, and every single human being. Again, this information is not commonplace. You cannot just find this information anywhere. That is why most individuals don't know anything about this. So again, the esoteric knowledge and esoteric, teachings would say that the sacred secretion is the process of actually becoming saved, not so much as a of a being saved by a human being looking in the sky or expecting for someone to come down from the heavens to save you or anything of that sort. According to esoteric knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and text, the sacred secretion is the process that happens biologically in the body, whereas there's a transition goes on with a seed being born, a germ being born, that seed being cultivated, that seed being uh, produced and actually producing all of type of health benefits, new blood, different all type of different things. So again, from an esoteric teaching, salvation comes from this process called the sacred secretion, not being saved by an individual. So this information, again, like I said, is not common knowledge. So if according to esoteric knowledge, being saved happens by preserving the semen, the seed, and cultivating the seed, going through a particular monthly process. And this process happens to both male and female. Everyone has this seed or this germ inside of them every month, be it male or female. So according to the process of the sacred secretion, anyone can be saved, whether it be male or female, whether you are straight, whether you are gay, whether you are crooked. It does not make a difference, because once the body is able to process this seed, if I may say, correctly, then the oil and all of the anointing and all of that spiritual text that the Bible talk about being anointed, uh, but the oil running down the head and all that stuff and so forth. That is what this is talking about. The Christ oil, Christos, being saved from this particular oil. So according to this process, it doesn't make a difference of your sexual preference. Everyone will be saved. So according to this process, uh, your sexual preference, you still will enter the kingdom of heaven. You still will be saved based on this process, not based on any religious dogmatic belief systems or organizations like you may have been told in your church and from your pastor, your priest, or your ministers. The process that I'm talking about will save anyone, white, black, brown, gay, straight, crooked, tall, short, whatever the case may be. That is what I'm talking about here today. So according to this philosophy, my teachings, yes, gays will enter the kingdom of heaven, because we're literally not talking about a physical heaven. We're talking about a process that takes place in the human body that affects the mind overall.
Illustrate that there will never be a discrimination about gays or homosexuals, LGBTQT entering the kingdom of heaven, because those practices, the practice of sacred secretion, is a biological practice that allows all individuals to enter the kingdom of heaven. So now let's use another biblical reference. I think this is going to be my last point that I'm going to make, because I noticed that my videos are usually very long. It's just that I try to talk as much as I can, to give as much information as I can. You could go and watch the video, break it up, stop, pause, whatever you choose to do. Just watch the video. And I thank each and every one of you guys once again for watching the video this long, sticking around, because I know that these videos, again, like I said, are extremely long and it may be difficult to watch in one shot. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you for watching these videos. For anyone who have stuck around this far, thank you very much, to say the least. So back to the sacred secretion and back to the Bible. And the Bible, I will give you guys another example of how scriptures was misconstrued. There's a scripture, I can't remember where it is, talks about all the individuals who will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And this is where the individuals say that homosexuals will not enter the kingdom of heaven. They are drunkards, thieves, and adulterers, and all of these different lists of individuals who they say will not enter the kingdom of heaven. But I'm specifically talking about homosexuals at the time on that list. And homosexuality is on the list is because, once again, the process to enter the kingdom of heaven is a biological process. It is not, it is the seed being crucified on the 33rd vertebrae of the skull. And that is what we're talking about, the Christ oil being crucified, the Christ seed being crucified, died and resurrected and coming back to life. We're not talking about a physical death, burial, and resurrection of a physical human being. This is the kept secret of the sacred secretion. So again, the sacred secretion, that scripture is talking about those who would not be able to achieve the sacred secretion when they say that homosexuals and those who lie with animals. I'm not saying that you should sleep with animals, by no means, but I'm saying that scripture is talking about the sacred secretion. When they say homosexuals was not enter the kingdom of heaven, they're not talking about physical, real human beings entering the kingdom of heaven. Again, once again, this is esoteric knowledge. This is not exoteric. This is not meso or mesoteric knowledge. This is esoteric knowledge. And when you look at the scriptures from an esoteric perspective, we are talking about positive, negative, male, female parts of the brain, parts of the mind, parts of the psyche, the female aspect of the brain and the male aspect of the brain. This is what they're talking about when they're talking about homosexuality. And we know that everything has polarities. So we're talking about the male mind, the female mind, the moon, the sun, positive, negative, left, right, masculine, feminine energies. That's what we're talking about. And we know that the left brain is considered the male brain. And we know that the right brain is considered the female brain. And so this is what they're talking about, that the intercourse should take place within the left brain and the right brain. And the left brain is usually considered the male brain, and the female part of the brain is considered the right brain. However, most individuals may not be aware that the right brain is also considered the spirit part of the brain. The spirit part of the brain is the right part, and the left part is considered the flesh, the male, masculine, the body is considered the left part of the brain. So I hope you guys are seeing where I'm going with this. Now, again, the intercourse should take place with the left brain and the right brain, the male mind with the spirit mind. That is what they're talking about. So when you hear them talk about homosexuality, they're talking about the male mind intercoursing with the body, with the flesh, with the male, with the carnal mind. That's what they're talking about. They're not talking about two males. They're not talking about man and animal having sex and not entering the kingdom of heaven and being put to death. They are saying that if you do not intercourse the male and the spirit, the left brain and the right brain, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. That is what they're talking about. They're not talking about physical people. So again,
So just a very brief recap. Like I was saying again, esoteric knowledge is something that is usually were kept secrets. They were only shared amongst certain societies, secret societies, the elite, the 1%, and other ancient, powerful uh, religious organizations had these information that were kept a secret. And we know we have the Gnostics, those individuals who kind of, we have the Dead Sea Scrolls and all of these different books that were taken out of the Bible, the canon and all these different things were taken out of the Bible. So we do have a lot of information that was suppressed and hidden and just pretty much kept secret from us as well throughout the years. And so this information that I'm talking about as well is also one of those esoteric hidden secrets. When the Bible talk about all of this, thou shalt not lay with animals and things of the sort. Again, I'm not saying that you should lay with animals. I'm not saying that or sleep with animals. I'm saying that when they talk about these things, they're talking about the mind. They're talking about the carnal mind, the animalistic side of the mind, intercoursing with the spiritual mind. We should have a pure intercourse with the male masculine mind, with the female feminine mind, the male mind with the spiritual feminine mind, to produce a harmonious aspect between the left side of the brain on the right side of the brain. We're not talking about physical human beings here. So again, this information would be somewhat suppressed or would be taught as we're talk. They would teach you in traditional religious circles that we're talking about physical beings having sex with physical beings. But from an esoteric perspective, no, this information we're talking about something far much deeper, something far much more powerful. We're talking about the relationship between the psyche, the relationship between the mind, the relationship between the positive aspect of the mind, the negative aspect of the mind. We're talking about polarities. We're talking about the esoteric hermetic principles. That's what we're talking about when they talk about man should not lay with man and all of these things and all of that. We're talking about the mind, masculine mind laying with the animalistic carnal mind. That is what they're talking about. But however, again, they have taken this information and they've made it about human beings, homosexuality. No, that is not what the ancient text was all about. However, it has been misused and abused and misquoted as well to gain power and to have some type of hold over a certain group of people as well.
Would not hear that from your pastor, your minister, your preacher is taking this all literal. Your pastor, the ministers, and all of these individuals are taking the Bible literal, and they do not understand the esoteric meanings of the scriptures. That is what I do. I teach the esoteric version of the scriptures. And again, like I said, the left brain is the male side of the brain, and the right brain is considered the female side of the brain. The left brain is considered the male aspect, the man aspect, the flesh aspect, the animal aspect of the mind. So when you hear them talking about man should not lay with animals, again, I am not saying that it is okay to lay with any animals or have sex with any animals, but the esoteric teaching is that the left brain, the male mind, should not have intercourse with the flesh, should not be so attached to the carnal mind, the fleshly desires of the body. That is what they're talking about, that the male mind should have intercourse with the female mind, which is the spirit. That is why we see throughout the Bible, we see Jesus talking about him being the bridegroom and him getting married and all that. That is talking about the Christ in you being married to the spiritual female aspect of the mind, the virgin birth, all of that is talking about the virgin mind, the spiritual conscious mind, the clean and pure, unadulterated mind. That is what they're referring to when they are talking about left brain, right brain, homosexuality. It has nothing to do with physical males having sex with physical males and physical females having sex with physical females, because this left brain being a male and the right brain being female, this is normal in whether you are male or female. It does not make a difference. Whatever you are, your left brain is considered the male, and your right brain is considered the spiritual female aspect of the mind, of consciousness. So that is one factor that I wanted to also bring to this equation. Hopefully that also helps individuals to understand that the whole homosexuality, the condemnation of homosexuals is simply not true. It is basically
And like I just said again, the whole male and female aspect, both men and women, boys and girls have a left side, masculine side of the brain, and they also have a right side, feminine side of the brain. So it doesn't really make a difference what sex you are physically. You do have both a left masculine side and a feminine spiritual side of the brain, be it whether you are a boy or a girl, man or woman, and that is the purpose of having the proper intercourse with the mind.
men being dogmatic and wanting to project their whatever they are trying to project onto individuals and want to have the whole individuals accountable for something that is biological and they have no control over. So with that being said, I think I've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. A very quick recap. Again, King James I was a homosexual who was the producer, director, and orchestrator of the King James Bible. He had a 14-year relationship with the Duke of Lennox, if I may say, Lennox, Lennox, Esme Stewart, his 14-year lover, and he truly had a real, just deep love affair with George. What's the name of the guy? George Villiers, correct. George Villiers, again, the first Duke of Buckingham. So, and then we have the scriptures talking about eunuchs being uh, homosexuals being natural, but that also too is denied by some pastors. They would say homosexuals, they are talking about men that had some type of physical defect, maybe their scrotum or something didn't really work out naturally, something didn't, something naturally was defected in the male physical sexual organ, but that is not the case. And then we have the last factor again, the sacred secretion, the Bible talking about homosexuality, male, and female is literally talking about the mind, the male mind intercoursing with the female mind is the most natural intercourse. You cannot have the male mind intercoursing with the flesh, the male mind, and we know that men, the human biologically we are called animals. So that is also why they say man should not live with animals. We're talking about making love to the carnal, fleshly mind and desires as well. So with that being said, I'm going to end this video. It's been a very long video, but I hope my point was being made. And again, once again, thank you guys very, very much for watching this channel and watching and sticking around this long. Again, this is an astrology channel, and all of these things are related. I'm just giving you guys a very, very brief idea about me and some other facts before I get much deeper into astrology as well. So I think I'm going to bring this video to a close. Again, like I said, I think I've covered pretty much all grounds in defense of homosexuality, and despite the fact being a heterosexual male. I just, again, like I said, I do not like to see the pot calling the kettle black as well. So on that note, I would like to end on an astrological note as usual, and may the stars shine brightly on you always, and may the planets work in your favor always as well. Triple P, and I'm out. Oh.